It's now time to call upon our next keynote speaker. Please help me in welcoming to the stage Alex Stavros, CEO of Embark Behavioral Health. He's going to be chatting about the latest trends in behavioral health. Come on up, Alex. One minute while we mic him up. We're very fancy here. We're like ET Entertainment.
How many here are married? Most everybody? Well, this may look a little bit familiar, but I'm going to get down on one knee and say what many men say, which is to a potential spouse and wife, "You make me the happiest man on earth. Would you marry me?" Thank you. Now think about that for a minute. Who was that? Who said yes? You make me the happiest man on earth. So, would you marry me? Is anybody catching the statement that it's about me? That he makes me happy, therefore, would you marry me? Because he makes me happy. There's something that's a little bit selfish in that, right? That I'm focused on my happiness and finding somebody that makes me happy. There's a study that was done that shows the most unhappy people in our country are married with kids. Why do people keep on getting married and having kids then? Well, this is why I believe that 50% of marriages end up in divorce. Because those of you that are married would realize, gosh, it's pretty tough and hard. So why do we keep on getting married, and particularly why do we keep on having kids? Especially because people also get divorced and they get remarried again. And people have one kid and they realize, I'm not that happy, especially those first few months or years, and then they have another kid. What I would argue is that the reason we get married and have kids is not for happiness, but it's because we're trying to find joy. And joy is a deeper state. It's a condition of the heart versus happiness, which is an emotion of the heart. So the reality of marriages, particularly those that are successful, for those people that understand that marriage is about service, it's about sacrifice, it's about suffering. It's about giving of yourself to the other. So naturally, we would want to get down on one knee and say, I want to serve you for the rest of my life and suffer, and no matter how hard it is. The reason I want to marry you is because I want to be there for you. And if we go into that with that mentality, we then understand that that service and that suffering is actually what makes us more human and a better person. Now, the issue is that our country is obsessed with the idea of pursuing happiness. The pursuit of happiness. It's written in the fabric of our country. So what happens naturally when we don't have happiness in our marriage and our relationship? We have a friend who says, what? You deserve to be happy. And whatever it may be, something that we're not doing, we have some friends that tell us, go and do that. Do what you want to do. You go be happy. You deserve to be happy. So we leave our spouse, we leave our wife. We focus on our happiness. It leads to divorce. It leads to estranged children. It leads to maybe not estranged, but not as deep of a relationship. We spend more time in work. We spend more time figuring out what really fills us up. Is it eating? Is it fantasy football? What are those things that are really about us? See, happiness is inherently a selfish pursuit. Not only is happiness often inherently a selfish pursuit, but also happiness, the root of happiness comes from the Old English hap. And what does hap remind you of? Hap. Happenstance. Hapless. It's about something that's depends on the circumstances. It's by chance. So there's studies that show that the more we pursue happiness, the more we try to find it, the more elusive it becomes. Why? Because it's just happenstance. My name is Alex Stavros, and I'm the CEO of Embark Behavioral Health. Embark Behavioral Health is one of the largest private family behavioral healthcare companies in the country. We're in 16 different states. We offer the full continuum of care from outpatient, intensive outpatient programming, partial hospitalization programming, wilderness therapy, long-term and short-term residential therapy, all focused on adolescents. Today, what I want to argue is that the number one behavioral healthcare trend for us to be aware of is the epidemic we have in our country with adolescent mental health. And I will argue that the root cause of this is the lack of joy in our society. I grew up in Lima, Peru, in South America. My parents still live down there. They live in one of the slums in the outskirts of Lima called Flores de Villa. For those of you that don't speak English, Flores de Villa, translated into English, or for those of you who don't speak Spanish, means flowers of the valley, which is an ironic name for a slum that was built on a garbage dump. But I grew up spending my weekends playing soccer on the garbage dump with a lot of the youth that my parents' charity serves down there. They moved down initially as missionaries back in the 80s. In the 80s, Peru was at the brink of collapse, the whole country. Inflation was at 9,000%. Typical inflation rate in the States, low single digits, 9,000%. The Shining Path, one of the bloodiest terrorist movements to ever exist, was running rampant, had taken over the mountaintops and mountain ranges in the Andes Mountains and the villages, and it had started to move into Lima. I remember growing up, and in my house, there was a car bomb that shattered all the windows of our house. And so I remember in my bedroom, there was plywood over the windows because we didn't have time to replace it with new glass. I also remember that the terrorists were bombing the electrical pylons in the nearby hills, which gave electricity to where we were in Lima. So I remember doing homework under candlelight. I also remember the school I went to. For those of you that are from California or other places where there are earthquakes, Lima is on a fault line, so there are a lot of earthquakes. So we always had at school the siren, which was the earthquake siren, and we all would know what to do. But during that time, we also had the bomb siren. So we would train and have the drills to know what that siren went off, where we would go and what we would do. What the terrorists did was they threatened the people in the villages in the mountains and basically told them, either you join us or we kill you. And so a lot of them ran, and they ran to Peru, to Lima, the capital. And they started to settle on the outskirts of Lima and just build a little hut. Those started to become the slums of the people that were moving down. And during that time is when my parents and my family decided to start up the charity and the work they were doing to serve those families that were moving there. Now Flores de Villa, which used to be dirt roads, used to be all huts made out of plywood and cardboard and corrugated metal as a roof. Now there's running water, there's property rights, there's electricity, there's so much more. Who's been to the slums before? Not necessarily in Peru or a shantytown somewhere in the world. You know, one of the interesting things with the slums is that how people end up there and the life there is really tough and difficult. Nobody would describe it as happy. But you go into these slums and you travel the world and you see what? The kids. Kicking a ball made out of cloth, the dirt, throwing rocks around with a big smile. A smile that sometimes we don't see in our youth here in the United States. And I've spoken to so many people who have been to the slums, or I've been to the slums, it's like, wow, the kids look so happy. They're expecting kids to look somber, to look depressed and sad. But there were these smiles, and even so much, they said, I have never seen smiles like that before. So why are they so happy? It's because you're not seeing happiness, you're seeing joy. Joy is the product of a shared experience. It only comes about by putting others first. The deepest form of joy is found when you find meaning in pain and in suffering. Think about what life is like in the slums. For a family that my wife and I support in Florida de Villa, it's a mother. Her name is Vilma. She has 5 kids, now ranging in ages from 10 to 28. When we first met them, there were only 4 kids. When we first met them, they lived in a hut like I described, and they only had 2 beds, and they all shared those beds. 3, at least 2 to 4 per bed, dirt floors. The oldest would have to drop out of school to take care of the youngest, drop out of high school at the age of 14, and really care for them because their father had abandoned them. What we see in that situation, in that family, is that there's purpose. What's the purpose? The purpose of that family, through the pain and suffering, the difficulty in which they live, those tough decisions that 14-year-old boy has to make, is to sacrifice for their family, for that relationship. They realize that if they don't have each other, they don't have life, that to survive, they need to be there for each other. They also do not have TVs. They don't have iPhones. They don't have iPads. They don't have all these different toys for them to go off to a room and play by themselves for a while. They have to be with each other to engage, to get stimulation. So they talk, so they connect. They're there for each other. There's a sense of personal responsibility. Not that they're victims. They don't have enough time because of the importance and the time that they spend surviving. They don't have enough time to make up why they're in that situation, or this person's that, or this, or there. They also don't have a lot of access from a technological information perspective in terms of how others live. Their reality is all they know. Therefore, they live in the moment. They're present. Those dynamics create joy, a deeper state of being, dynamics that do not exist in our society today in the United States. Tagore was a Bengali poet, and he had a quote that said this: I slept and I dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, I found that service was joy. Our belief in Embark behavioral health is that human beings, unlike any other animal, have something unique, which is a search for meaning. Why? Why do I exist? Why am I here? That search for identity tied to that meaning. No other animals feel this. There are studies that show that other animals feel hurt, feel empathy, feel sadness, feel love, feel happiness. Not joy. Not the deeper sense of purpose of knowing why I exist, why I am here, my purpose on earth. And it's the question that's most asked by human beings. Who here has asked that question? What's my purpose on earth? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? Who here knows exactly why they're here and what they should be doing? But we're still really curious. We want to know. We want to study. We want to find that out. We want to figure it out. And therefore, that's why people travel around the world. That's why they do different things. Go find yourself. However, that's the push of inner focus, of more me, and getting the world to revolve around you, because once you find yourself, you can then have everybody understand who you are and revolve around you, whereas really the power of joy is finding something else and attaching yourself to something bigger, Like the family in the slums, Vilma, they attached themselves to that family and to that slum and that community. The life of that 14-year-old, Andres, was not him. He knew he existed so that his younger siblings could thrive and have an opportunity. He knew he existed so he could protect his community. He didn't exist for the sake of himself. He was attached to something much bigger. At Embark Behavioral Health, our core purpose, our reason for existence, is to create joy. Because we believe that the adolescent mental health epidemic in our country is due to the lack of joy in our country. I'm going to read some statistics for you here in a second. Pull this up. Real quick, a few statistics. Suicide rates among 18 to 19-year-olds climbed 56% from 2008 to 2017. Twice as many 22 to 23-year-olds attempted suicide. 55% more had suicidal thoughts. Serious psychological distress, which includes feelings of anxiety and hopelessness, jumped 71% among 18 to 25-year-olds. Major depression among 20 to 21-year-olds more than doubled. Depression surged 69% among 16 to 17-year-olds. 1 out of 5 12 to 17-year-old girls experienced major depression last year. Like that, there's probably 20 other statistics that I could share. It's drastic. It's across the board. It's boys, it's girls, it's preteens, it's teens, it's young adults, everybody. Every age group, every state, every gender. This is why at Embark Behavioral Health, we've signed on to what we call a BHAG. It's an acronym that's a play on Jim Collins' work that stands for the Big, Empathetic, Hairy, Audacious Goal, BEHIG. Off the heels of 2017, where adolescent mental health, anxiety, depression, and suicide reached an all-time high, our big, empathetic, hairy, audacious goal is to, by 2028, within 10 years, reverse those trends and take adolescent anxiety, depression, and suicide to all-time lows. If you visit bhag.org, you can sign up for a newsletter, see some of the resources we have, and join us on this important mission. We have to do it together. So, why those statistics? Generally, I've spoken about the importance of joy, the lack of joy, as the root cause. But maybe more specifically, what is causing this in our society? We've spoken a lot over the last couple days about technology. And it might be appropriate now to share that we believe that technology is one of the leading reasons. And this is the reason why. There's various different factors. But if you think about who has adolescents today, 10, 12, 13 teenagers, who here is concerned about their mental health either because there's struggles or they know that their friends are, you hear about it at school or in the news. It's on everybody's mind, and whenever, just like a stockbroker, you go to a reception and somebody naturally is going to say, oh, you're a stockbroker, right? So can you give me a stock name? For me, they ask, I've got a 10-year-old, and I'm really worried. They're almost a teenager. I've got a teenager, and I'm starting to get some signs, and I'm worried. What do I do? Why? What's happening? So what's happened in our society, if we remember and we talk about all the things that existed or didn't exist for that family, Vilma and Andres and their kids, in terms of no TV, no iPads, it was just them connecting. And there was a singular sense of purpose in terms of experiencing the pain and suffering to be there. One of the core issues in our country is that we just really think you've got to be happy and find happiness. Social media does what to us? Says everybody is happy. You go on social media, everybody is happy. Naturally, we don't want people posting all these depressive things, but at the same time, people don't want to do that. So what happens is that even though we know, and our kids know, that social media isn't really that real, we still internalize it. We still internalize it in the sense of It's the fact that I have everything. I live in this country and I still feel unhappy. We also know that now keeping up with the Joneses doesn't mean just the neighbor. We know the scores of colleges, universities, which ones are ranked higher or lower. So as soon as it's time to graduate high school, we know who went where. In order to get into college, university, or feel or be successful, we have to be involved in a lot of different sports. We have to be the president of the class. Our kids are stressed out from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. And at nighttime, they're in their bedrooms on their phones. They're not sleeping well. We know that the teen brain needs at least 12 hours of sleep every single night. And we know the impact that phones and iPads can have on our sleep. Not only that, but the relationships. From a neurobiological development perspective, research has shown that human beings are wired to connect, and we're required to connection to develop and grow in a healthy way. So that lack of relationship, we're starting to have, the kids have relationships on their phones. And they also have a lot more relationships, whereas 30 years ago, you only had 2 or 3 really best friends, and you spent every day and all the time with them. You'd be out on the streets playing, you're always connecting. Now, kids will go home, or they're in their cars texting their friend that's in the back seat. In fact, those deep relationships that all of us remember in high school, when we fell in love with that one person, and we knew that was the person we were going to be with the rest of our life, and our parents knew that that wasn't the case. You just don't know, but we knew that they didn't understand. And then we ended up breaking up, and they ended up leaving us, and it was devastating for us. That is healthy development, deep emotional connection, and deep heartbreak. These days, we don't have those relationships anymore. Relationships are superficial with the kids. A kid's dating, I guess I'm dating a few girls, and a lot of them are online. They're also on the deeper best friend relationships. These are all important for the development of self and self-esteem. Our parents at home are bringing work. They're on their phones constantly. They're on their laptop. We're not connecting and present with our parents. Attuned and in the moment, that creates the safety that's necessary for us to engage in the world. Our parents now also know, because of all the information out there, what the other families are doing, where they're traveling, what their kids are doing, what they're doing for the summer. And if they're not doing all this other stuff, they feel like they're falling behind too, that they're not being good parents. The other thing is that kids at a younger age are being exposed to more information, more news, more chaos, more violence. What ends up happening is the kids are locked in a state of anxiety and stress, combined with pressure, combined with the sense that they're not happy, where the reality is nobody said anybody here is going to be happy. In fact, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It's not to be happy and be sad, but don't pursue happiness as your purpose. You will be left empty. Pursue joy. Pursue an opportunity to serve, to give of yourself, to love others, to sacrifice yourself for something else that's bigger than you. That will allow your child to focus more on what it means to have a sense of self. So I want to wrap. How are we doing with time? Great. I'm going to wrap up with a quote from Desmond Tutu. Archman Desmond Tutu said, "Discovering more joy does not save us from hardship and heartbreak. In fact, we may cry more easily, but we will laugh more easily too. Perhaps we are just more alive. Yet, as we discover more joy, we can face suffering in a way that enables rather than embitters. We have hardship without becoming hard. We have heartbreaks without being broken." Thank you. I guess if anybody has any questions about why you're not happy, go ahead. Yeah? Oh. No? Yes? No? Okay. One question.
Yes, so I agree with everything you said. I have 2 teenagers at home. The fight on electronics, it's always there, right? And a very specific rule, if you don't take electronics to your bedroom. And when I talk to a lot of my friends, then the reaction, so I'm the bad mom, I'm the tough one, and they say, we can't do it. We just can't do it. So how are you going to change this? How can you change this behavior of parents, especially talking about divorces where parents are always trying to please their kids today?
Yeah.
How is this going to ever change?
Yes, great question. How do we really enforce the boundaries when everything is so accessible for the kids? I was talking to somebody a little bit earlier where the bad thing used to be maybe that the boy would hide a Playboy magazine under his mattress. That was the extent of it. But now everything we can access on our phone and how we communicate and the cyberbullying, everything on there. And so we want to create boundaries, but we realize, the kids tell us or others, is that no other parents are doing this. And so they say, you're a bad mother, you're a bad dad, you don't let me do anything. I think the thing to realize is that that's always been there. That has always been there. Parents have always tried to put boundaries. Other parents put less or more, and the kid always says, blames you, and that's their way of kind of manipulating and trying to take control, and they're trying to develop their identity, and they want their separation. And what we just need to understand is that the brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 25. Until then, we don't really have a cause and effect developed. We're going to be irrational. We're going to make decisions that we're shooting from the hip. And this is the reason why rental car companies, by the way, don't rent any cars until you're that age. And it's not because they knew about brain development decades ago. It was they knew that everybody who was totaling their rental cars were 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds. So at 25, your brain is fully developed. We have to, when something is developing and growing, what's the most important thing to do with it? It's vulnerable right then. We need to protect it. And at the end of the day, our children who are trying to find themselves are going to push back against that. And as parents, we have to double down. Despite what anybody else is doing, more freedom, more access, let them choose what they want. Their brain isn't capable of choosing the right decisions. And therefore, we have to go against the grain and emphasize that I know right now you don't like this, you don't like what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Trust me, I'm doing it for you. And we believe that there need to be more clear boundaries for our children, especially now because of all the access to information. And what's critically important is to be aligned with your spouse, but we try to help parents as much as possible have stricter boundaries around this and protect their child's brain development. Thank you so much.